welcome everyone to our session. Welcome here in the audience and also remotely. After a short introduction of Ralf and myself, Ralf will present to you the insourcing project conditions and how he mastered challenges in project management on Lufthansa side. And afterwards, I will specify a little on the implementation of PCI DSS controls and how the challenges there were actually managed. So for an introduction, my name is Jana Ehlers. I'm the division manager of PCI topics at SRC, and I'm also a QSA myself. SRC has been supporting Lufthansa in PCI topics since 2006, so since PCI DSS started. But before we go into details here, let Ralf first introduce himself.
Okay, thank you very much. Also from my side, a warm welcome. Also mentioned by Jeremy, my name is Ralf Wupper. I'm IT consultant at Lufthansa Systems, and my key topics are IT security and project management. For the project Future Digital Workplace at Lufthansa Group, I was responsible for the PCI DSS part. With my simple words, for the implementation of all necessary things to achieve the PCI DSS compliance. Please take over.
Yeah. Just a short introduction, some people might not have heard of SRC. We are a QSA company, but also a German assessor and consultancy company for many security topics coming from secure card payment and founded in the year 2000. So as you see, since then, security topics have spread. I will not bore you by going into details of every standard that we're covering. If you have any questions, just contact me anytime. And regarding PCI, we started with the predecessors of PCI DSS with MasterCard and Visa compliance programs in 2003. Have been doing PCI DSS ever since and are nowadays accredited for almost all PCI standards. And we're also part of the Global Executive Assessor Roundtable with a PCI Security Standards Council GEAR. And for Lufthansa, I'll hand over to Ralf.
Thank you. Yes, let me give you a brief introduction for Lufthansa Group with the figures of 2022. I guess for most of you, the brand Lufthansa is well known, and most of the numbers speaks for themselves. Regarding PCI DSS, the Lufthansa Group is the last merchant with about 33 billion revenue. And I think it is most common understanding that the airline business depends largely on credit card payment. Yeah, first thing, general project conditions. Let me short explain what we understand with insourcing digital workplace. A DWP model provides end-user devices like notebooks and desktop workstations with related backend services to customers. In our case, of course, for Lufthansa Group business units. Previously, this service was provided by an external third-party provider, which is a PCI DSS certified infrastructure provider still. Lufthansa had made the decision to insource this service to a coexisting internal DWP provider. This includes also the PCI DSS workstation with related services. We were lucky that existed not only one DWP provider at Lufthansa Group, but on the other side, the internal provider had no experiences with PCI DSS. This is the reason why Jana and me took over the task to care about the PCI DSS compliance. Regarding our experience from similar situations, our assumption was that a high effort will be necessary to achieve the PCI DSS compliance. In recent years, Lufthansa has continually optimized its back office processes, so the need to process credit card data has been continually reduced. With the impact that compared to the total number of workstations, only a small number of PCI DSS workstations are required. But regarding the project cost and effort, that exists no significant scale effect, no matter how many PCI DSS workstations we will finally have. And at this moment, it seems a long time ago, but COVID-19 pandemic was a very difficult time, especially for airlines. As mentioned before, because the internal provider has no experience with PCI DSS, we had to start from the scratch. With the aim to find out, step by step, what we have to do, we executed a gap analysis first. For this purpose, we organized workshops together with the previous and the new internal DWP provider. In these workshops, we compared what we have with what we need and put it all missing parts on our gap list. Afterwards, we use this gap list for the development of a target design, which we split it up in a rough and a detailed planning. In the rough planning, we describe for every issue from our gap list one or more solutions regarding technology, documentation, and processes. In the detailed planning, we got deeper for a detailed estimate of the implementation effort, duration, cost, and responsibilities for each solution. It marked the transition from the evaluation to the implementation phase. And one word before, I think my principle is have a good plan and stick to it. So we used a combination of classic and agile project management method to master the complexity and great amount of work. With dedicated 3 separated phases, evaluation, implementation, and rollout, every with a product backlog and iteration of sprints. The evaluation phase had a duration about 3-4 months, and the implementation phase needs over 2 years. Furthermore, we structure all issues into 4 action areas: technology, processes, documentation, organization structure, and changes. With iteration of sprints, which has a duration of 14 days each, we improved the maturity of a solution until it has finally matched. To assure that the whole solution achieves the requirement of PCI DSS, we successfully performed a PCI DSS pre-assessment at last. Then the rollout phase and the operation started. For further details, I'm very glad to hand over to Jana again.
Thank you, Ralf. So after Ralf has outlined the project management approach, me as a QSA supported Lufthansa mainly in defining the necessary steps for actually implementing the applicable PCI DSS controls. So, of course, we started with the obvious, setting up the workstation securely, which was the asset here. So this included, of course, hardening of the workstation, secure configuration, and so on. And for people that are not that familiar with PCI DSS, they might have thought, okay, now the workstation is secure. Are we ready with PCI DSS? But of course, you as a knowledgeable audience will know right away, no, we're not ready. This was only the beginning of PCI DSS compliance. We had to take some additional initial efforts to become PCI DSS compliant with this service. So there have been initial efforts like network restriction to make sure that wherever you use this device, someone else in the same network where you use the device cannot reach your data, cannot reach your workstation. So there was a personal firewall configured, of course, on the workstation to make sure that the access is restricted. Second, their backend systems had to be set up to enable secure management and secure administration of the workstations. So this included things like monitoring, like access control, central logging, patching of the workstation. All this was done centrally, and we needed backend systems for that, and they had to be secured as well. Another thing that had to be considered was the help desk services, because they had to be adjusted because they were accessing workstations for support, and also they were responsible for password reset. So both services had to be set up in a PCI DSS compliant way if it was not already the case. And of course, as usual, documentation had to be created, so a configuration standard had to be set up for the workstation itself, but also for the backend systems. And so after all this additional initial efforts, are we ready with PCI DSS compliance then? And still the answer is no, because as we all know, PCI DSS is not only about technologies, it's also processes and procedures that are very crucial for the scope. So a lot of regular and occasion-related procedures were set up for managing the devices, starting with security maintenance, identifying vulnerabilities, patching, change management, you know the topics. Also monitoring was set up to be sure that events from logging, file integrity monitoring or malware protection were reviewed and reacted to. What also had to be set up was regular testing, like vulnerability scans and penetration tests, and also regular reviews. We know the quarterly reviews of adhering to procedures, but also something like reviews of the personal firewall rules and reviews of user accounts, user privileges. And last but not least, reporting was set up, reporting to the internal PCI DSS compliance management, but also how to take part in the annual PCI DSS assessment of Lufthansa, all in all. So setting all those processes up, it took some time to get it clear to all parties involved and to make sure that they understand. But in the end, there was some kind of realization, okay, we never seem to be ready. Change is inevitable, and it will be a continuous process to keep up compliance. And if we need to continuously keep up compliance, we considered how we can ensure this in long term. And for the digital workplace engineers that are actually setting up the systems, PCI DSS compliance is only one of many tasks and not their focus. They might forget about compliance after they have set up the initial systems. So to take care of the initial continuous compliance, we therefore decided to set up a dedicated compliance management team for the digital workplace topic. And this included definition and documentation of the organization itself, of the responsibilities and tasks of this team. And so finally, after this was set up, secure long-term operations is ensured with this. So it was only a short insight into one project. You can imagine Lufthansa has a very large scope, and this was only one small project, but still took more than 2 years. Our short insight into the insourcing project already comes to an end here. But I'd like to summarize what we have presented to you, because it was one example of dealing with changes. And you can take home what we did, what helped us to mastering the changes. So it was thorough project planning at Lufthansa with early inclusion of all responsible parties that had sometimes to be convinced that PCI DSS compliance might be necessary. And also ongoing adaptation to any changes. And it's not only this change, but also meanwhile during the project, technologies might have changed. The PCI standard had changed. We are now preparing for PCI 4. And also any management decision might again change, or threats might change. And also the continuous procedures help us to deal with this. And so to conclude our presentation, as the world is full of changes, please be prepared to adapt. Thank you.
Thank you.